Hello everyone, welcome to today's video lecture of Object-Oriented Programming using Java. The paper code is CS504A. This is Shayuni Chandra, Assistant Professor of Department of Computer Science and Engineering of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology. Let's look at today's lecture contents. So today we will learn about abstract keyword. This was the topic that was left in the last lecture. Today we will learn how the keyword can be used before a class or before a method. After that we will go on to the next keyword, which is final keyword. We will see how final keyword can be used before a variable or before a class or before a method. Then we will learn why multiple inheritance is not supported by Java. We have already seen all the different types of inheritances that can be implemented in Java, and we have also shown you some example programs to implement those inheritances in a Java program. Now today we will explain why multiple inheritance cannot be supported by Java, what is the cause, and even though it cannot be supported, it can be implemented with the help of interface. So after that, we will learn about the basic concepts of interface, how an interface can be declared and what are its uses. And then in the next lecture, we will show you how multiple inheritance concept can be implemented in Java using interface, as because it is a very important concept. So let's move on to the first topic of our today's lecture, which is abstract keyword. Now, the first question that comes in mind is why this abstract keyword is required. So let me explain this to you first, then we will go on to the programming details using abstract keyword. There are situations in which you will want to define a superclass that declares the structure of a given abstraction without providing a complete implementation of every method. That is, sometimes you will want to create a superclass that only defines a generalized form that will be shared by all of its subclasses, leaving it to each subclass to fill in the details. Such a class determines the nature of the methods that the subclasses must implement. One way this situation can occur is when a superclass is unable to create a meaningful implementation for a method. Now, this is the basic requirement. This is the basic reason why we will need abstract keyword in a Java program. Now, let me give you a practical example where you will see that the use of abstract keyword is very much required. Suppose this is the scenario that is given to you. There are three programmers, namely P1, P2, and P3, and we want P1, P2, and P3, all of these three programmers to do addition. Now we want programmer P1 to do 2 plus 3. That means we want programmer P1 to add two integer numbers which are also given to that person, which are 2 and 3. Now for the next programmer P2, we want him or her to add two integers again, which are 5 and 5. And for the next programmer P3, we also want him or her to add two integers, which are 15 and 12. Now suppose if these operands as well as the operator is given to, if these things are given to all of the programmers, they can easily do the coding, or they can easily write down the programs which will compute the addition or a summation of these two integers. Now suppose these operators are not given to them. That means this. So these in these cases we can see that only the operands are given to them, the operator is not given to them. That means if you provide the two integers only to the programmers, to all the three programmers, they will not be able to understand what actually they have to do with these values. It can be applied to do some arithmetic calculations, or it can be applied to do some bitwise or logical calculations. That means it can be anything. The calculation that they are supposed to do can be anything. They will not be able to understand what they actually have to do. So if you provide these values to them only, they'll not be able to do the actual calculations that we want them to do. Now suppose we are providing them with a method signature like this. So we have provided them with this method signature. We have provided this method signature to all of these three programmers, and we have also provided them with these sets of values. That means if we provide them with these signature, then they will be able to understand that for say for the programmer P1, this programmer will be able to understand that we want that person to store the first value 2 into x and the second value 3 into y, and then we want that programmer to apply this method signature in his or her program. And after that we want that programmer to do the addition programming. And also this add method will return an integer value. So by seeing this return type of the method, the programmer will be able to understand that after doing the summation operation, he or she has to return the value to the main program. By seeing this name, that person will be able to understand that we want that person to give the method name for computing the addition of two integers to be add. And the programmer P1 will also be able to understand that we want him or her to add two integer numbers x and y, and if we provide him or her with these values, then that person will be able to understand that we want him or her to store 2 into x and 3 into y. That means if we don't provide them with the operator, but instead if we provide this method signature to this programmer P1, that person will be clearly able to understand what we want him or her to do. He or she will be able to understand that we want that person to do some addition of two integer numbers. Similarly, if we provide this method signature to the next programmer P2, then that person will also be able to understand that we want him or her to do addition of two integer numbers, and the numbers are also given to him or her, which are 5 and 5. Similarly, if we provide this method signature to the next programmer P3, then he or she will also be able to understand that we want him or her to do addition of two integers, and the integers are also provided, which are 15 and 12. That means this method signature will come in handy if we want to provide some information to the programmers, if you want to say what you have to do to the programmers. But here what we are doing, we are just providing this method signature to the programmers, but we are not providing the full method body to the programmers. We want that these three programmers will rewrite the method body in their codes. That means what we actually have to do is that we have to provide a superclass kind of thing where we will write down this kind of method signature, and we will provide that class to these three programmers. So these three programmers will actually create subclasses of that superclass, where inside that subclass, these three programmers will actually implement this method in their program. So basically there will be three subclasses for all these three programmers for the single superclass that we will provide to them, wherein this method signature will be there. So P1 will create a subclass for that superclass wherein this method signature will be there. And P inside the subclass created by P1, that programmer will implement this method. That means that programmer will write down the method body in his or her class, and inside the body, that person will write down the addition program actually. Now the next programmer P2 will also create a subclass of the superclass that we will provide him or her, wherein the method signature of this method will be there. Inside that subclass, P2 programmer will implement this method, and he or she will write down the addition program, the code for addition inside this method implementation body. Similarly, the P3 programmer will also um, have access to the superclass that we will provide them, wherein this method signature will be there. So P3 programmer will also create a subclass of that superclass, wherein he or she will write down the method body. That means he or she will implement this method and will write down the method body, inside which he or she will write down the code for addition. So every programmer will actually inherit the superclass that we will provide to them, inside which this method signature will be there, and in each of the subclasses that these programmers will create, they will implement this method, and that means they will write down the code or body of this method, inside which they will write down the code for addition. But remember that as the programmers are different, their codes can also be different. That means P1 will implement this method signature according to his or her logic. P2 will implement according to his or her logic. Similarly, P3 will also implement according to his or her logic. So in this case, we can see that this method signature, providing this method signature is becoming very and you can say that it's an efficient way using which we can provide the information to the programmers that we want to tell them. So instead of just giving them the operators, we can also provide them this kind of method signatures, which they are going to implement in their program according to their own logic. So if we provide this method signature to them, then they will be more clear about what they actually have to do, what method name they have to give, what return type of that method should be, what are the parameters of that method should be, whether it is a non-parameterized method or a parameterized method, etc. So in these kind of situations, if we can provide these kind of method signatures, then it will be very much beneficial, or you can say it can be very much efficient for the programmers to easily understand the concept what we actually want them to do. Now in all these three cases, what these programmers will do is that they will implement this method into their subclasses. That implementation means that they will actually override this method signature that has been given to you, given to them in a superclass. So if they override this method signature, then by overriding these method signature, they can easily write down the body of the method, wherein they will write down the code of the addition inside their subclasses. So this thing can be achieved by using the abstract method. So these are these situations where you will actually need to use the abstract keyword before a method. So here in this example, we have demonstrated the use of abstract method. So these are the certain methods that we want to be overridden by subclasses by specifying the abstract type modifier. So here I have not given the abstract modifier. So if you want to provide these kind of method signatures to the programmers so that they can implement these methods in their subclasses on their own, we have to use an abstract keyword before this method signature like this. So this is how you have to use the abstract modifier before the method signature. These methods are sometimes referred to as subclass of responsibility because they have no implementation specified in the superclass, just as I have discussed. Thus, a subclass must override them. It cannot simply use the version defined in the superclass. Now, to declare an abstract method, we have to use a general form. I have already shown you an example in this problem, in this situation. So let me write down the generalized form of using an abstract method. So here you can see that this is the generalized form of writing any abstract method in a Java program. This is the abstract keyword, this is the return type of the method, and this is the name of the method, and these are the parameter list. So as you can see here in this example and here in this generalized form, that no method body is present. Any class that contains one or more abstract methods must also be declared as abstract. To declare a class abstract, you simply have to use the abstract keyword in front of the class keyword at the beginning of the class declaration. There can be no objects of an abstract class. That means an abstract class cannot be directly instantiated with the new operator. Such objects would be useless because an abstract class is not fully defined. Also, you cannot declare any abstract constructors or abstract static methods. Any subclass of an abstract class must either implement all of the abstract methods in the superclass or be declared as abstract itself. Now, let me show you an example program that will implement abstract class and abstract method concepts in it. So this is an example program that demonstrates the use of abstract keyword in Java. Here you can see that this A class is a class which has been made abstract. That's why we have put this abstract keyword before it. And this call me method is an abstract method which has a return type as void and it has no parameters. So it is a non-parameterized method and we don't want to declare its body here. We just want to declare this method signature here as abstract, and we want the subclass that we will create of this superclass A to implement this call me method in its body. That means the subclass of A class will actually override this call me method. So as we want to declare this call me method as abstract, we have put this abstract keyword before it. Now, till now you have learned methods like this. This is known as a concrete method. By concrete method because its implementation is full, no abstraction is there. But this method call me is an abstract method. It's not a concrete method because it has no implementation written inside it. Its implementation will be done by the subclass of this superclass A. So these are the two types of methods that you will learn throughout the Java courses, concrete methods and abstract methods. So this concrete method has a system.out.println statement inside its body, which will print this statement. So as we want to declare this call me method inside the body of this class A, you have to declare this class as abstract. As I have already told that if a class contains at least one abstract method, then that class has to be declared as abstract. Now, if you want to declare the abstract class, then you have to use the abstract keyword before the class definition. And if you want to declare a method as abstract, then you have to use the abstract keyword again before the method definition. But for some Java compilers, you don't need to actually write down the abstract keyword before it. If you don't write down the method implementation or if you don't write down the body of the method, then the compiler will automatically assume that it is an abstract method that we want to declare it as. But some compilers will not be able to understand if you don't give the abstract keyword before it, even if you are not giving the implementation details of the method there inside the class. Then in those cases you have to use the abstract keyword before the method definition. So for uh, in our cases we will use the abstract keyword so that no errors or no other complications occur. Now this B is the subclass of the class A. So this subclass has to implement this abstract method that we have declared here inside the superclass. That means this B subclass has to actually override this call me method inside its body. Overriding means it has to write down the body of the call me method inside it. So that's what we have done here. We have written a simple system.out.println statement which will print this thing. This is the main class. Inside it, the main method is there. You can see that we have created the object of the subclass and not of the superclass, because creating the abstract class object is meaningless because it has not it has no it has a partial implementation of the method inside it. It does not have the full implementation details. That's why we don't want to create any object of the abstract class. We can create the object of the subclass, and you know that using the object of the subclass we can definitely access the contents of the superclass. That's why we have created the object of the subclass b only. Small b is the object of the subclass. Using that object we are calling the call me method. It will obviously call this b's version of the call me method, and using the same object we can easily call the call me to method, which is the superclass content which can be easily accessible using the subclass object. So when call me method is called, this statement will be printed first, and when call me to method is called, this statement is will be printed after that. So let me show you the output. Now, just as I have told that the first output will be for calling the call me method, and the second output will be for calling the call me to method. So this is how abstract keyword is used in a Java program. You have already seen that the abstract keyword is very much important in case of providing an abstract view of the methods or a class to outsiders who will implement those abstract classes and implement the method body in their own classes. So this is how the Java programming language implements the concept of data abstraction, where only the required information will be visible to them and the not so required information will be hidden from them. As we can see here that the not so required information is the method body of the call me method, which is not required to be written inside the A class, which needs to be written inside the B class. That's why we didn't write the method body of the call me method inside the A class. So this is how Java implements data abstraction. One thing you have to keep in mind that although abstract classes cannot be used to instantiate objects, they can be used to create object references, because Java's approach to runtime polymorphism is implemented through the use of superclass references. Thus, it must be possible to create a reference to an abstract class so that it can be used to point to a subclass object. Moving on to the next topic of our today's lecture is final keyword. This keyword can be placed before a variable, before a method, and before a class. Now let me explain to you one by one what happens when the final keyword is placed before them. In this program, in this code snippet, you can see that I have declared an integer variable x, and I have also initialized it with a value 10. Now you can put the final keyword before it, just as I have told. So if you put this final keyword before this variable declaration or this variable initialization statement, then this value of this variable becomes constant. Just as you have learned the const keyword in case of C language, here the final keyword also works like the same. If you place the final keyword before a variable, then you have to initialize it. That means you have to put some value into it while declaration. If you don't do it, that is going to give you an error. That means if you write it like this, say final float, say p, if you want to declare a final variable like this is going to give you error. That's because you have not initialized it. Whenever you want to declare a final variable, you have to give some value into it, like say 3.5 or something else which is a float value. Here it is an integer variable, so I have initialized it with an integer value. So this should be done while using the final keyword before it, and whenever you are writing here some value, this value becomes constant throughout the program. That means throughout the program you cannot change the value of x. The value of x will remain constant, which will be 10 throughout the program. You cannot change it. So final keyword actually makes the value of a variable constant, which is the same concept that you have learned in C language while learning the const keyword, where you have learned that the value of the variable becomes constant throughout the program. Here also you have learned that by using this final keyword we can do the same thing. That means we can make the value of a variable constant, and for that we have to use the final keyword before the variable declaration. And remember that you have to initialize this variable whenever you have to declare it as final. Now this final variable can also be placed before a method. Let me write it down an example piece of code for you. Suppose this is an example method that has final keyword before it. It has a return type void. It has a single parameter, which is an integer parameter, and there are some codes written here. I have given dots because I don't want to show you these things. I just want to show you the use of final keyword before this method. Now if this final keyword is placed before this method show, you cannot override this method. That means if you want to place this show method in a superclass, and if you want to override this show method in the subclass, you cannot do this if you place this final keyword before it. That means final keyword will actually prevent method overriding to from happening. So you can easily say that final and abstract, both the keywords cannot be used simultaneously in a method, because abstract keyword says that if you use abstract keyword before a method signature, you have to overwrite that method in the subclass. And final keyword says that if you use it before a method signature, then you cannot override it. So the statements are contradictory in nature. That's why you cannot put final and abstract keywords simultaneously in a method declaration statement. So by putting final keyword here before this method signature, we are actually preventing method overriding from happening. Now this final keyword can also be placed before a class. Let me write it down for you. So suppose I have written a class like this, which is a class A, and there are the body of the class. I have not written it because I just want to show you how final works before a class. Now, if you place this final keyword before the class declaration, you cannot inherit this class. That means if you want to create a subclass, say class B, from this superclass A, you cannot do this because you have used the final keyword before the class definition. So final keyword, by placing this final keyword before a class definition, actually means you are preventing inheritance from happening. So we can say that by using the final keyword before a method, you can prevent method overriding from happening. And by using the final keyword before a class, you can prevent inheritance or subclassing from happening. So basically final keyword, which is when placed before a method or before a class, actually prevents inheritance from happening. And final keyword, which is when placed before a variable, then it prevents the variable's value from being changed. It will keep the value of the variable constant throughout the program. So this is how final keyword can be used before a variable, before a method, and before a class. Moving on to the next topic of our today's lecture is why multiple inheritance is not supported in Java. What is the reason so that multiple inheritance, which is a very, very important concept, is not supported by Java? Now, let me show you an example which will show you why this concept is not supported by Java, even if it is so much, even if it has so much importance in object oriented programming languages, and how you can implement this multiple inheritance in Java by using interface. Suppose this scenario is given to you, which is a basically hybrid inheritance scenario, where you can see that the upper part, which includes the classes A, B, and C, is hierarchical inheritance, and the lower part, which includes the classes B, C, and D, is multiple inheritance. Now, suppose this hybrid inheritance scenario is given to you, and now let me explain to you why multiple inheritance is not supported in Java. Suppose there is a method named void show. Void is the return type and show is the method name, which is a non-parameterized method written inside the body of the A class. Now, as B inherits A, so it can also override the show method inside its body like this. And C also inherits A. So C can also override this show method inside its body like this. Now, when D wants to inherit its superclasses, B and C both are superclasses of the subclass D. Now, when D wants to inherit the superclasses B and C, then which show method it will override? So, um, if it wants to override the void show method, then the compiler will not be able to understand whether D overrides the show method of this B class or the show method of this C class, because both of them have the same methods show with the same signature. So when D wants to override this show method like this, the compiler will not be able to understand which version of the show method it actually inherits, whether B's version of show method is being inherited or C's version of the show method is being inherited. That compiler cannot differentiate. So this is the problem which will happen whenever you want to use multiple inheritance or hybrid inheritance in case of Java, where you can see that diamond shaped problem has arisen which cannot be solved by the Java compiler. So this problem is known as diamond problem in Java, or it has also another name which is deadly diamond of death problem. So these are the two names of this problem, diamond problem or deadly diamond of death problem. And because of this problem, you cannot use multiple inheritance or hybrid inheritance in case of a Java program. But although you cannot use it directly, you can also use it indirectly in a Java program, because the concept of Java multiple inheritance is very much important. So you should have other ways. That means Java should have other ways to implement the concept of multiple inheritance, and interface is the way how one can implement the concept of multiple inheritance in Java. So because of the diamond problem, we are unable to implement multiple inheritance directly. So whenever you want to implement these kind of scenario uh, in case of Java coding, so it should look like for the class A, the declaration should be normal like this, class A. For class B, the declaration should be class B extends A. For class C, the declaration should be like class C extends A. This thing is a hierarchical inheritance that I have already shown to you while explaining runtime polymorphism. And while creating the class D, the declaration should be like class D extends B extends C. So this is the way this statement, class D extends B extends C. So this is the way how you can implement multiple inheritance, but this code, this line of code is not supported in Java. So this is what you have to implement using interface in case of a Java program. Now let's explain the concept of interface first. Then in the next lecture, we will show you how multiple inheritance can be used to implement the concept of how interface can be used to implement the concept of multiple inheritance. So let's move on to the next topic of our today's lecture, which will give you the basic concept of interface in Java. So moving on to the next topic, which is interface in Java. An interface is basically a kind of class. Like classes, interfaces contain methods and variables, but with a major difference. The difference is that interfaces define only abstract methods and final fields or final variables. This means that interfaces do not specify any code to implement these methods, and data fields contain only constants. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the class that implements an interface to define the code for implementation of these methods. So the general syntax of an interface is very similar to that for defining a class. So let me write it down for you. Here you can see the general form of defining an interface in a Java program. So here you can see that interface is the keyword using which we can define an interface, just like a class. In case of a class, you have seen that class is the keyword using which you can define a class. And here in case of interface, using the keyword interface, you can define an interface. And this interface name is the name of the interface. You can give any name of your choice, just like a class. And inside the body of the interface, these are the variable declaration statements, and there can be multiple methods declaration statements, but you have to keep in mind that all the variables will be of final type and all the methods will be of abstract type. Now let me show you what is the general form of declaring a variable inside a method, inside an interface. So here you can see that this is the way how you can define a variable inside an interface. The final keyword is used because we have already told that the variables inside the interfaces are all declared as final. That's why we have declared a final variable. So this is the variable declaration of a normal final variable. And here you can see that the methods are declared. This is the general syntax of declaring a method inside an interface body, where you can see that the abstract keyword is used because I have already told that all the methods that we will declare inside an interface body are abstract in nature. That's why the abstract keyword is used. This is the return type of the method, this is the method name, and these are the parameters. So this is how you can declare a variable inside an interface body, and this is how you can declare methods inside an interface body. The main difference between a class and an interface is that you can, although you can declare an interface just like a class using the keyword interface, but the variables of an interface are all final in nature and the methods in an interface are all abstract in nature. Now let me show you an example interface. So this is an example interface that I have written here. This is the keyword using which we will define the interface. The name of the interface that I have given is I. You can give any name, obviously. Inside the interface body, I have declared two variables which are of final type. The first one is an integer variable. As it is a final variable, it must be initialized whenever it is declared. The next variable is a float variable, which is also a final variable, and I have declared it with a value 100.75, and this is the character capital F, which actually defines this value as a float literal. So we are forcefully using this value to be a float value, which should be stored inside this p variable. So we are using a float literal here in order to store it into the p variable. And next is an abstract method, which is the show method. Here you can see that the code for the method is not included inside this interface I, and the method declaration simply ends with a semicolon. That means the class that will implement this interface must define the code for the method. Just as I have discussed in case of the abstract method, here also this abstract method must be implemented by the class that will implement this interface. Now the major differences between class and interface I have already discussed. I am repeating the differences between a class and an interface again. You can see that the in members of a class can be constant or variables, the data members actually, but the data members of an interface are always declared as constant, that is their values are always final. The class definition can contain the code for each of their methods, that is the methods can be abstract, um, or it can be concrete. That means the methods that can be included inside a class can be abstract methods, that means no codes will be contained inside its body, or it can also be concrete methods, that means codes will be contained inside its body. But in case of interface, the methods are abstract in nature, that is there is no code associated with them. It will be later defined by the class that implements the interface. Now a class can be instantiated by declaring objects, but an interface cannot be used to declare objects. It can only be inherited by a class, because we can see that the interface implementation is not complete because it contains abstract methods. So this was the reason why we didn't created any object of an abstract class, and for the same reason we won't be creating any object for an interface. A class can use various access specifiers like public, private, protected, or default that we have already learned, and some are left to be learned in the next chapter, which is package. But in case of interface, only the public access specifier will be used. Now in the next lecture we will show you why only the public access specifier will be used, why not others. So this is a wrap for today's lecture. So today we have learned about the basic concept of interface. In the next lecture we will learn about some advanced feature of interfaces, like how we can inherit interfaces, how a class can implement interfaces, and last but not the least, we will learn how multiple inheritance can be implemented, how the concept of multiple inheritance can be implemented in Java using interface. Thank you for listening to today's lecture. See you in the next lecture.